Hey guys, it's Lady, and today we'll be talking about something I call the crow problem. Now, before we dive into that, I just want to put a real big disclaimer that this is going to be a more unscripted video. This is like a new series I'll be doing in between my other videos that take way more time and research and effort in editing and recording and all that stuff, like my character analyses or my story summaries. And by the way, if you like that kind of content and would like to help support the channel, you can do so through my Patreon, where there's a ton of different kinds of perks, including early access and or Discord perks, so go check that out if you wish. Also, just a heads up that there will be minor spoilers for Sky FC and SC characters, and also the Cold Steel Arc characters, especially in CS4, so there's your warning. But now onwards to the actual meat of the video, and that is the crow problem. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, I'm referring to how I think one of the major reasons why Crow is such a hit or miss character in the Cold Steel arc is how so much of Reen's time spent with Crow at Thor's is entirely optional, whether via bonding events or optional NPC dialogue. See, we're led to believe that Reen developed a strong friendship with Crow throughout the year, yet the mandatory events are pretty much only right at the beginning or right at the end of all CS1. Sure, like, there's that one moment mid-game where Crow helps Reen save Elise and witnesses his ogre form, and ultimately such a great opportunity to start building momentum towards that final confrontation in CS1 when we learn that Crow is the Azure Siegfried, right? But I think it ultimately went nowhere because they just didn't include any more scenes that were mandatory after that, or at least not from what I can really recall, you know? So why is this such a huge problem? Well, consider this. What if large sections of Joshua's story with Estelle and FC was locked behind bonding events? Just think about that. Like, as someone who was intrigued by Crow right from the very beginning of Cold Steel 1, because, you know, the character that is all silly and lighthearted but actually is smarter than they look kind of character always very much appeals to me. But yeah, like, as a player who likes that, I did all of the, you know, like, optional NPC rounds where you learn a little bit about Crow here and there. Or I did all his optional bonding events, right? So in other words, I probably ended up caring much more about him as, you know, compared to the average player. But a character as centric to the storytelling, you know, the entire narrative of the arc, cannot be treated in this way. This is just awful execution in storytelling, really. It's your job as the writer to make the audience care. You can't rely on the audience to, oh, I'm gonna do the optional events and the optional stuff to care about a specific character. Like, you know, it's kind of like in debates where the burden of proof is on the person making the argument, right? If you're trying to make a point, it's up to you to present the evidence for it. So going back to Joshua in Sky FC, what if, you know, I'm not particularly drawn to that kind of character, right? Like, sure, I don't have anything against them, but I'm not going to go out of my way to do optional stuff for that character, right? Now, take into account all the fun times, the hard times that he went through with Estelle in Sky FC, and let's say 50% of that was optional bonding event or optional NPC dialogue. Would the ending have hit as hard in Sky FC for most people? I know that cliffhanger is talked about as one of the biggest ones in the series, right? And so many people, not only did they care about Estelle, but they cared about Joshua too, you know? Like, they wanted to know more about him and, you know, fucking save him, right? And because I would say the game did an excellent job making you care about not just Estelle as a protagonist, but seeing through her eyes, seeing how much not only she cares about Joshua, but also just Joshua as a character, because you learn a lot about him just hanging out with him, right? Now, I don't think bonding events as a game mechanic is inherently bad, because like depending on the game and the specific narrative it's trying to weave, it can work. So like Persona, a mostly standalone series whose narrative I would say is more like plot point driven rather than character story driven, you know, or character centric. Because, like, just take a look at the protagonists of each one. It's the closest thing to a blank slate aside from a game that has you literally creating your own avatar, right? So, like, there's a lot more emphasis on, like, arc by arc by arc by arc, and the arcs are very short, right, in a Persona game. So, a lot of characters, they don't really need a lot of development per se, because they kind of did their role that was necessary for the arc, and then, you know, you move on to the next one. But Trails, on the other hand, is entirely different. Like, Estelle, Kevin, Lloyd, Rain, all the protags, they all are their own established characters. So even with the limited amount of choice we do have in some of the later arcs, especially like in Cold Steel, the options don't stray very far from the kind of personality Falcom builds up for each of these characters in the main narrative, right? Like, for example, in Persona games, as a protag, your dialogue options range from literally being a shithead meme lord or just being a very nice goody two-shoes person, right? But Falcom, it doesn't really give you that range in the Trail series, and understandably, like, they shouldn't. They need to make the character seem as in character as possible, while I guess still trying to give the illusion that they're giving player choice, which, you know, it's that's its own problem. But that's not a topic for this video. But anyway, the main point I'm trying to get at is that this bonding event kind of mechanic just does not work for a character that is supposed to play such a vital role in the main narrative across multiple, like 100-hour long games. Like, I know that Falcom has done this before already in the Trail series with the Crossbell arc, and how like Risha and Wazi's backstories are entirely hidden behind their final bonding events, which is, you know, that's not a great thing to do either. But on the other hand, I would say it's not as bad because Wazi and Risha are also not super huge players in the overall arc of Crossbell, right? Like, sure, they're still important, but not on the level of, let's say, like Randy or Tio in the main narrative. And so it's still bad, of course, but I just don't think it's on the level of egregious to me as the crow problem that we talked about this whole video. But anyway, yeah, this is just my rant on this topic, and I don't know, I hope you guys like this more unscripted video. And just let me know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. I like it if these videos open up like a discussion in the comments. But anyway, please join our welcoming and active community on Discord at discord.gg/LadyVirgilia. And also check out my other socials here on Twitter and Twitch. And also check out my Genshin lore channel if you love Genshin. But otherwise, I also want to give a huge thanks to all my patrons for all their support. And really, just thanks for watching, guys. And until next time, take care. See ya!